Hi everyone, I'm Cole. We're here for In Between, and I'm very, very lucky, very happy to be able to talk to the brains behind Cryptozoo. And I'm here with Dash Shaw and Jane Samborski, who both, I don't know how you quantified the kind of credits at the end, but both had huge parts to play in this movie, obviously. So thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Cryptozoo kind of follows Lauren Gray, who is like a cryptid rescuer, along with a Greek gorgon named Phoebe, and they're tasked to retrieve a Japanese mythological creature called a Baku and return to the titular Cryptozoo, which is owned by a woman called Joan, who is basically a xenopist, I guess. But all the while, they're trying to kind of keep ahead of the US forces who are trying to take the Baku for their own war effort.
Pretty accurate. You've got this, obviously this action adventure structure, and within that, kind of an examination of each of those women: Phoebe, the Gorgon, Lauren, the cryptozoologist, and
Yeah,
Joan,
Cryptozookeeper,
and Joan, the xenophile, and why each of them are doing it. Why those
yeah, it's
reasons
kind of like
aren't why those reasons aren't always the best.
Yeah, and I like that a lot. I think that it's something I was going to touch on later, but you've already mentioned it, so let's just dive straight into that point. That there's like kind of a triangle of positive outcomes in the three main protagonists. You know, you've got Jane, Joan, and Phoebe.
A triangle of kind of motivations of people why they think the Cryptozoo might be a good idea. So their kind of conversation about the Cryptozoo is kind of the middle part of the movie.
Yeah.
And what brings them to it, and their kind of relationship to the mythological world.
Yeah.
But we enter the movie through these two kind of hippies who stumble across the Cryptozoo. But part of it is that none of the cryptids were invented by us. That they all come from actual mythologies around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope if the movie it's like a fantasy movie, but it's obviously about our world.
Yeah.
And then the kind of that relationship should be kind of exciting and disorienting in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, they say that like the best fantasies are just a real reflection of problems that we have in the world. I think there's a real success in this film. First of all, congratulations. Obviously, I didn't say that. But when I sat down to watch this film, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a little taste. I don't have a lot of time right now. I'll put on the first 10 minutes and see how I get on. And before I knew it, I was finishing the film. And I think kind of the structure of that, obviously you were introduced by the two hippies and they raised these kind of bigger questions about, the idea of what utopia leads to. But also that then kind of pulp action that we then follow Lauren through is so interesting and just so captivating that it seemed like the perfect lens to tell, something with these huge thematic questions through. And I'm just curious, where did that start?
Well, I'm really glad that you said that you like that kind of juxtaposition or combination of ingredients, because I feel like that the conversation between those three people, I would say, was kind of in the writing process what I felt like was the meat of the movie. But to me, I want it inside of a spectacle adventure film, and I feel like the kind of experiential ride of a movie can hold these questions, or not, like I would say not questions, but like a conversation inside of it. But I also want it to function as an hour and a half ride on that you have on a Friday night that's full of visual invention and cartoony kind of characters, and so that
you alluded to good science fiction being a reflection of the real world, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I'm animating, and I listen to almost exclusively science fiction and fantasy, and that's what I love about it. You can deal with these very real human, social, emotional problems that are hard to look at in the face, but you can kind of sneak around the back. And I think the action extravaganza of this lets us take this weighty material that if it were the only thing in the film would feel didactic, would feel like a lecture or, an ethics, class, and come around to it from a gentler place that allows people to be more receptive to that message.
Oh, and I feel like it's a very like pop art idea where it's like, there's obviously like a blockbuster Hollywood version movie of this. Like you're kind of thinking about it in the movie. You kind of know like Jurassic Park and kind of but it's been defamiliarized. It's been kind of messed up. And so you're seeing I thought of, if you're a kid at night and you see some kind of blockbuster movie on TV and you're sick and you kind of wake up and it felt like you had some like weird dream version of a big movie that if we could have that feeling, it would be pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think it definitely did that. Really. I didn't have any dreams about it. Sorry to tell you guys, but it's like when I watch something, and it's funny you talk about dreams because like obviously the Baku is such a central aspect of the story and the theme and everything. And it really took me a while to understand as to why the Baku might be the most important creature. And in my interpretation of it is that like, there's an underlying mythos in humanity that just kind of reflects the inner self, this is what people like Joseph Campbell talk about. And it kind of becomes, this mythology becomes a beautiful guide to help understand you and your journey as a human. So like how important is a Baku then who can whip away parts of your personality by pulling away your dreams or, help gentling that. So like, do you find then trying to interpret that into the story was difficult, or like when you hit the Baku, was that it like, okay, I think I have it here?
Yeah. When I was kind of researching different mythological beings, when I came across the Baku, that's when it felt like a movie idea, because movies can be so dreamlike when they're working well. So then, because I make comics too, like the Baku is like, okay, this is a movie. And the idea that this Baku, this like little kind of elephantine being that like sucks dreams in the universe of the movie is like the most important creature, that everyone wants it. It's that kind of like leap in logic that it would be a Baku and not like, a giant dragon or something like that. I feel like that's like a lot of alternative comics have like there's obviously like a logic based on a personality that is like different from reality that you kind of are going with. So I think that that it was a funny and like appropriate decision.
Dash does all the writing, so take this one with a grain of salt. But
meaning this is your interpretation.
This is my interpretation of what Dash does. But I think when you write a story, you have to pick some really strong pillars at the beginning of the story to build the rest of, to be the foundation for the rest of the decisions you make. And I know the Baku was right at the beginning, being a pillar of the story to say what kind of universe and what kind of people would believe that the Baku is the most important creature in the universe.
But Jane painted that Baku and spent a really long time trying to figure out how to crack it.
I made a terrible mistake when I was planning that Baku. For some reason, it was one of the last ones I painted, and I looked at the script and I looked at the storyboards, and for some reason, I didn't think I needed as many different angles as I did. And then so the entire process of actually animating it was like, oh no, I don't have what I need. Which was kind of but this is again getting into the nitty gritty. Sometimes when you run against problems against that, you get the best stuff. It becomes this very still creature. And I think that adds to its charm.
Yeah, and also the little spirals kind of seeping off its behind, I guess, back behind.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, when it's awake, it just boils, like the under the skin, you can see it moving. So it's got this sort of like contained energy, but its actual demeanor is very sleepy, very slow.
Well, Dungeons and Baku sounds like a much better kind of...
Oh, it has to be alliterative, though. It has to be like... battlements and Bakus or something like that.
Battlements and Bakus, yeah. Well, I'll let you guys take that idea. There's no problem there, let's talk about the kind of characters and stuff then as well, because a lot of the design feels very figurative in its drawing. It feels kind of very like life drawing and stuff like that. Whereas the character movements feel very hinged, What was the kind of design process behind that? Was it to do with actual aesthetic thought, or is it to do with the kind of constraints of the production, or both?
Well, that's the beautiful thing, I think, when an independent film is good, it's like the constraints and the aesthetic are together like this, and they're more than the sum of their parts. So I always thought it would be super, super cool to see figures that felt like figure drawing in an animated movie.
Cool. Yeah.
Because usually there's a production line that kind of hammers out the idiosyncrasies of figure drawing into a consistent model. So, if you're drawing someone I'm sure you've been to figure drawing classes. If you're drawing someone for like 30 minutes and their 5-minute poses, that person looks a little different, from moment to moment or angle to angle. And you kind of have this Picasso-like thing of this one person is holding all of these different personalities inside of them, and you're kind of getting hints at it as you're rendering it. So I wanted to have some of that figure drawing magic in Cryptozoo, particularly with those hippies at the beginning of the movie. We recorded the actors performing their scenes physically.
Oh, really? Wow.
So it wasn't rotoscoped. It was just literally like figure drawing class.
The actual line style that we're using was in part a reaction to the previous film, because we really felt like in High School Sinking, it's so much about that giant wobbly line, and there's like a distance between the characters because they feel, very like icons almost, very cartoony, for lack of a better word. And then we wanted
say broad.
Broad, that's the word for it. And then we wanted something much, much more specific for this. And yes, that did create a technical constraint, but I have loved puppet animation. It has been where my heart is. Lottie Reiniger, seeing Prince Ahmed in college was a transcendental moment in my artistic growth. Fantastic Planets, another really good example of that. And I would say that my style, both in my painting, which tends to run cute, and my animation, which tends to run realistic, sometimes feels boring to me. And so I want to create this constraint for myself where it is going to be inherently stilted, and then I have to work through that. And that tension between the realism I want and what my puppet will actually achieve creates something much more interesting than if I could make it do exactly what I wanted it to do at first glance. Does that make sense? And I like the artifice of it. I like to say, okay, we're going to push and pull, between the illusion and the artifice.
I really like that. That's a very beautiful way of looking at, the kind of limited steps in, let's say, the Wayang Kulit kind of style of Ahmed, or, any kind of limited animation anyways, is you're choosing the story you tell through poses, not just through in-betweens and stuff. But I think one thing for me that really stood out on this project that kind of really hooked me in more than anything else, apart from all the aesthetics and everything, was you married it so well with this there's kind of a veracity to the sound design, let's say. I mean, it was so tight, not just the voice acting, but the kind of sounds of the world and the music and everything as well. Something like this nearly hinges on a good sound design to draw people in.
Well, I'm really glad you said that. Ryan Price gets credit for that. And he worked on this thing for years.
Wow.
And normally I don't know how things are normally made in animated movies, but certainly in independent films, the kind of sound is like the last step where you're kind of trying to couple it all together. But Ryan Price was figuring out that Baku sound for as long as we were working on this movie. Just like 5 years, and he was kind of sending me Google drives of different kind of weird sucking, slurping sounds, and different passes.
Sorry, Dash. It's such a bizarre thing to like have in your ear constantly, like.
Yeah. Because the world is so artificial that I always tell the actors I don't want like quote unquote cartoony acting. I want a realism and a sincerity, and so the sounds are in your mind. They have, it has to be kind of like the heart or soul of the movie, while other things are happening on the surface.
Yeah, like the glue that kind of binds it all together, really. So you guys, obviously, you're both married. You just made, yes. But you just made another film, which you alluded to. My high school is sinking into the sea. So what was the kind of process like? Did you sit down and go, you decided to make another one, and you start getting money together? Did you kind of go, oh, I've done this before, don't worry, we're not going to make any mistakes again? And then kind of hit, like, what was that? How was the process different?
Yeah, that's time? Totally how, like, we knew exactly what we were
Yeah.
I did come off the first one. I needed a break because the final months of a movie are just crazy. And then I had a baby. I was very pregnant.
Congratulations.
But all I wanted was to make another one. I think that it's obviously amazing when a movie comes out into the world, but my happy place is being kind of in the middle of the project and knowing that I'm waking up and I get to solve problems and I get to advance this train that we're moving along. This one, when we wrote it, was just much more ambitious than the first one. The first one was really just Dash and I, and we had a little bit of other help, but it was just him and I animating it. And we thought, okay, we're going to get a little team together, and I now have to figure out how to manage a team. And that is a very different skill than just being an animator. We organized the first project entirely with pen and paper, which seems insane now, but it's very much a one-to-one correspondence. You do an animation and it would go in scene A, and then you would do another animation for scene B. And here, because of the nature of puppets, we're reusing things all over the place. We had so many more artists, so we had to keep track of where all the different art assets were. We were lucky enough to get interns from the local university, and we needed to keep track of who had done what. And Google spreadsheets saved our project and our marriage. Spreadsheets.
Yeah. A lot of it was trying to kind of course correct things from High School Sinking. Like an example was that with High School Sinking, I kind of, because I was roping in Jane and other people trying to figure out how to make this thing, I thought it kind of had to exist in a PG or PG-13y kind of space to have some hope for it to go anywhere. That was, I wrote that assuming I wouldn't get any good actors, then it would just be non-actors.
Little did you know. Yeah.
So then when we had a lot of it drawn, then we ended up getting a great cast for the movie. And then suddenly the movie felt much more real. And then when it came out, it played, Metrograph Theater and New York Film Festival, like very prestigious film festivals where it was mostly 99.9% adults in the audience.
Yeah.
So then I thought, great, like this is, it was very freeing that I thought, well, now I know that I can make an adult animated movie and there's an audience for it, because actually somehow it's easier to get adults to see it than I don't think many middle school kids saw High School Sinking, even though I think that they would like it.
Yeah.
And I can try to write more complicated parts, morally complicated, more specific parts, because I have a chance of getting good actors. So also for Cryptozoo, I only designed the characters after they had been cast. With High School Sinking, they were drawn before. So I tried to kind of take some sort of sideways inspiration from the actors into the character designs, like the main character Lauren being a great example of that, where she has a very like pre-Raphaelite Dante Gabriel Rossetti paintings of Jane Morris kind of look in her face, which is a very like iconic fantasy art kind of look that I hadn't seen in a movie before. I thought it was perfect for Cryptozoo, and that was directly kind of inspired by Lake Bell and her voice and performance. If it was a different actor, it would have been a different. The character would have looked different.
Now it's come out. Okay, you're handing it over to an audience, a global audience, and these are people who have, obviously, that come from all around the world with their own mythologies that are represented in this film. Okay, in some certain way. When you plucked all these, mythological characters and themes and everything like that, how much of in your head was just, okay, this suits the story, and how much of it was, this is actually going to be released at some stage and I need to get this right?
I know Jane always wants to get it right for herself.
I'm my own harshest critic. I hate it. If I can't stand behind it, I don't want it to go out the door. And it's less about the reaction of other people and more just, if I look at this in 10 years, I don't want to be hiding under my bed afterwards. I think that if you engage with culture and with ideas with integrity, then you have nothing to fear.
Well, the idea, just for writing anything, you also need some kind of weird naivete where you're just sort of in your own head and you're not thinking about how other people see it. That's kind of a necessary muscle to have on to make anything, I think. And I think sometimes people don't make things because it's hard to turn that brain off. It's some kind of weird, certainly with movies where
when you're making it, you have to believe that, yes, this is a movie for everyone. Also, the only thing I have to do is the thing that's right in front of me. You can't think about how big the project is. You have to just you have to narrow your focus, and you have to lie to yourself as much as you can. Because it's big and it's hard to get through, and anxiety can be crippling.
Yes.
So I think that's how we approach it with blinders on.
That's a really nice way of kind of saying to people, don't worry about it. Just do your own best thing that you can do.
That's much better than the lying to yourself. Don't worry about it. Much better message.
Just stop it. But anyways, thank you so much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a lovely conversation.
Thanks to Cartoon Brew for hosting this and
wanting to hear about the
Listen, continued success. I think you'll do very well, but best of luck, guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Slán.